We have a generational issue in selling. You know, sales has changed more in the last 5 years than in the previous 100 years. Now, I'm going to tell you something funny. I was saying that 5 years ago, and I had no idea how much sales was actually going to change. People think sales has changed so much due to COVID, and that was part of it. But what I tell people is that all COVID did was put changes that were happening on fast forward. But we have issues in the workforce right now and in the sales profession that are generational, that are technological, and that are cultural. And what it has done is created a huge generation gap between the average salesperson and the average B2B buyer. The average B2B salesperson in the United States right now is 47.1 years old. That's not a bad thing. That's not horrible. However, 15 years ago, the average B2B salesperson in the United States was 42. The sales profession in the United States has aged 5 years in the last 15 years. That ought to be scary to some of us. Those of us who want a long career in sales, because we're graying out. The gray tsunami, I'm a professional speaker, words are easy. The gray tsunami is coming at us. And a lot of companies don't know how to deal with that. Now, why has that happened? Well, number one, I think we've done a really crappy job of recruiting younger people into sales and positioning sales as a great way for younger people to build a life, to build security, to build all those things that we call the American dream. I think we've been terrible at it. And by the way, that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about in that August program in Kansas City that I've been talking about, but enough promoting of that. The truth of it is, this is an issue that we have to deal with. But it creates another issue, because B2B buyers on the average are not aging. The average buyer, the average person with purchasing authority in the business-to-business world in the United States is 36 years old. Right smack in the heart of the millennial generation. The millennial generation came up with very different influences and technology than the Gen Xers. I'm a Gen X, which, let's be honest, that's the best generation. But we came up with a different set of technological influences than the millennials. And those technological influences are driving how millennials see salespeople, how millennials communicate, and what they expect from salespeople. And here's the thing. Millennials and Gen Z, they're the most interconnected generations that the world has ever seen. Millennials have friends halfway down around the world that they've never met. But they are actual legitimate friends. They talk to them about important life issues. Millennials understand connections, and they're the best network generations that we've ever had. There's pretty good assets for people in business, right? Whether you're buying or selling. But it creates unique challenges for us as salespeople, particularly for those salespeople who have not grown up with similar technological and cultural influences. And everything that the millennials are in the buying world, you can just amp that up by about 10%. Turn it up to 11 for Generation Z, and Generation Z is coming in right behind. See, when we talk about millennials, and I may be showing my age a little bit, but most of the time that people talk about millennials, they talk about them as if they're babes in the woods, right? They're not. The youngest millennials now are 29 years old. The oldest are 44 years old. They are solid mid-career people. And the Generation Z, obviously, the oldest ones of those are 28 years old, which isn't all that far from 36. And we know that there are buyers in their 50s and 60s, so to bring that average down, there's got to be Generation Zs out there that are ready, willing, able, and capable of signing contracts for your services. Man, that creates some challenges, because a lot of times we don't speak the same language. Not only do we not speak the same language, we don't even speak it on similar platforms. That's what we're going to talk about this morning, is how to bridge that generation gap and how to understand how to solve the issue of the sales profession graying while buyers are getting younger. I'm going to answer a question that hasn't been asked yet. That question is, Troy, is it important then to have people of similar ages selling to people of similar ages? In other words, should millennials sell to millennials? Should Gen X sell to Gen X? Should Zs sell to Zs? Not necessarily. Age matching is not important. Style matching is very important. In other words, we want to sell to people in the manner in which they want to buy, which, by the way, pretty damn good rule for sales overall anyway, right? But we don't often do that. You see, one of the things that I have found is that there aren't that many people talking about this generational issue in selling. Now, there's a lot of people whining and complaining, but whining and complaining isn't talking. Matter of fact, this entire program that you're about to see came out of a conference in this industry 3 years ago from one question I was asked. Somebody asked me, and the question went something like this. It was a sales manager. And he said, Troy, all these younger buyers want to do is text. They don't want to answer the phone. So a lot of them don't even want to see people. How can we teach them to do it right? I stood there and I thought about it and I said, you know, you got a couple options. One, you can attempt to retrain an entire generation of people with buying authority, or two, you can figure out how to adapt and get good at selling to them. Well, how would I do that? I said, well, if all they want to do is text, start out by getting good at texting. We'll talk about that. But we want to sell the way they want to buy, and that means in many cases, we've got to get up to technological speed. Now, I'm going to give you a little inside baseball about millennials. Their approach to the world of work is different than most of the generations that preceded them. When we look at the generations, the World War I generation, the silent generation, the greatest World War II generation, the baby boomers, Gen X. And this started splitting a little bit in Gen X, I think. The older generations were very much live to work generations. Work defined them. Work was the focus of their lives. If they had to put in 60, 70, 80 hours a week to get the job done, that was fine. And then they would work in some of the fun stuff during their work day. You know, golf outings in the afternoon during a work day, 3-hour martini lunches, all that kind of stuff. This started changing a little bit with Gen X, and it really locked in with the millennial generation. Millennials, some Gen X, Gen Zs, are work to live generations. In other words, work-life balance became a very, very big thing. And again, I'll mark that somewhere in the Generation X, about halfway through. Work-life balance became a very big thing, and the way that millennials interpret work-life balance is this. They say, I want to get as much work done between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. as I possibly can. Then at 5 p.m., I'm going to be out of the office. All you're going to smell is burning shoe leather from me getting out of there, and I'm going to go have fun with my friends. I'm going to spend time with my family. I'm going to do those things that makes me me. That is not a bad thing. But it does have implications for how those generations want to be sold to, because it impacts how they spend their work days. What we find is that guided correctly, managed correctly, and acculturated correctly, millennials are incredibly productive people at work. They get a lot done between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. And by the way, I'm going to get up on my soapbox a little bit here too. This is a little bit off topic, but I want to talk a little bit about hours in work versus work in hours. I have been an advocate for many years that when we construct a job, whether it be a sales job, management job, whatever, I like to look at what I call the hard 40. The hard 40 is my bargain with an employee is you give me 40 great hours per week. You work hard for 40 hours, and I'm not going to ask you for 50. I want work hard, play hard. Well, the millennials personify work hard, play hard. And for that reason, we've got to approach them differently. We've got to work on the same level technologically as they do. We've got to make better use of their time during the workday. And we've got to communicate using some of the same language that they do. And here's how we start walking into this. First of all, I have advocated against fish on the wall selling almost my entire career. I've been in this business for almost 21 years, but even going back to when I was a sales manager. Does everyone know what fish on the wall selling is? Raise your hand if you don't know what fish on the wall selling is. A few of you. Okay. Fish on the wall selling is a very old school method of selling where you walk into the customer's office, you look around on the wall, and you're trying to find something there that creates some sort of a connection. You see a fish mounted on the wall and you say, hey, you fish, that's great, I fish too. Let's talk about fishing for 30 minutes, we're going to be buddies, and then you're going to buy everything from me. It's disingenuous. It can be perceived as fake, and worse, the younger generations perceive that as an utter and complete waste of time. Matter of fact, I used to have an office in Kansas City. I now work out of a home office, just more efficient for me. But I used to have an office in Kansas City where people could come in and see me. I'd interview candidates for my clients, and vendors could come in and talk to me. And I'm a car guy. I've told you about that. And so on my walls, I had pictures of my race cars, my hot rods, fun things I'd done, and that kind of stuff. And it never failed. Some lame salesperson would come in, and the first thing he'd want to do is start talking to me about cars. And I could ask two questions and realize he didn't know or care about them. It was completely fake and disingenuous. I actually ended up taking all that stuff down off my walls. They made me redecorate my office because I didn't want to fall victim to fish on the wall selling. So when I say kill the fish on the wall, what I mean is kill that type of selling, because it is not effective. And here is the biggest reason why it is not effective. Remember what I said about younger generations wanting to be productive, wanting to pack as much work into those 8 to 5 work hours as they possibly could? Fish on the wall selling is a misuse of that time. They perceive it as disrespectful. Now, I'll give you an example. About a year ago, I was doing a ride-along with a salesperson in Kansas City that sells office supplies and equipment. And we're calling on the CFO of a company. And this was during football playoff season. Of course, Kansas City is Chiefs crazy. And we walk in, and this young lady, she's mid-30s, I'd say, had pictures of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce on her walls. I mean, Chiefs, right? Salesperson I'm with, he's about 60 years old, and he walks in, he sees this, and I just saw his eyes light up, and I thought, oh, crap. I wasn't wrong. And he immediately starts talking about, hey, what'd you think of that game on Sunday? And boy, weren't they great on that last drive, and yada, yada, yada. And 5 minutes in, she says, your time's up. He said, what? We haven't even started talking business yet. She said, exactly. He said, well, I thought we had scheduled this appointment for a half hour. She said, we did, but you're wasting my time. So I'm going to end this appointment right now so I can get back to work. And he starts trying to walk it back. Oh, no, we can talk. She said, no. You are wasting my time, and no offense, have a great day, but I don't schedule my appointments to talk about Chiefs. I love the Chiefs, but that's not what this is for. Have a good day. And I mean, he's just kind of, and we get back in the car, and he said, what just happened to me? I said, you tried to do fish on the wall selling with somebody who was interested in fish on the wall selling. Look, younger buyers are not going to schedule an appointment to talk football for 30 minutes. So you better be equipped to talk about something other than football. What do younger buyers want to talk about? Business. Considering what we're there to talk about is business, that's kind of a cool little fit, don't you think? A couple of years ago, I spoke at a convention in Florida for the heavy equipment industry. And at this convention, they did something really cool. They had a panel discussion right after me, and they put 3 people up on stage that were all buyers of heavy equipment. When I say heavy equipment, bulldozers, excavators, that kind of thing, capital equipment. And one of them was 40 years old, one was 36, one was 62. Combined, these three men have bought $40 million of heavy equipment in the previous year. So these guys were hitters. They were target prospects for everybody in the room. And one of the first questions that was asked of the panel, and I sat in and I wanted to see this, one of the first questions asked of the panel was, what is the best way for a salesperson to approach you? I mean, what do you want from a salesperson? And the 40-year-old guy said, look, I have salespeople all the time calling me and they want to take me out for a beer, they want to buy me lunch. They don't get to first base. Don't do that. When you call me, you better be prepared to tell me how you can help me do business better. Because that's, during the hours of 8 to 5, that's what I'm all about. I want to know how you can help me do business better. And that better be your approach. And if it isn't, you're not going to get the appointment. However, if you come in, you get an appointment based on the idea that you're going to help me do business better, you come in and you ask me good questions, you show me a way that you're going to help me do business better, we do business, and you do help me do business better, suddenly you become somebody that I want to have a beer with. I want to have lunch. I want to get to know you on a personal level because now you have moved into that circle. The second guy who was 36, he goes, yeah, I'm pretty much the same way. He said, I probably, he goes, I don't know if it's quite as hard-nosed as he is about it, but yeah, that's how I do it. And the funniest thing was the 62-year-old guy in the end, he said, well, he said, I'll be honest with you. He said, I'm the opposite. I like to be taken out for lunch and I like to be taken out for a beer. And I feel like I want to get to know somebody on a personal level before I do business with them. He said, however, don't listen to me, listen to them. I'm the past. He said, I am 2 years away from retirement, and in 2 years, I am never buying a bulldozer again in my life. These people are going to be buying bulldozers for the next 20, 25 years. Do it their way. And this is where things have really changed with respect to younger buyers. The biggest, most fundamental change with younger buyers is that they completely flip the script with respect to how you build relationships with them. Older buyers, yeah, you could call them up and you could ask them out for a beer, you could ask them out for lunch, you could call them up and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about your laundry services. They'd take the appointment. You could go in, sit down, talk about fishing, talk about cars, talk about football, baseball, whatever, talk about the last vacation they had, talk about that for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then towards the end, you get to some level of business, you might even walk out of there with an order. That's how those older generations did business. The younger generations, A, you're not going to get the appointment like that. B, if you try that tactic, you're probably going to get kicked out of the office. They look for efficiency in their time. So it requires a completely different approach. Here's the funny thing. I still get cold called a lot by salespeople of different services. Most salespeople are absolutely terrible at cold calling. Most salespeople haven't got the slightest idea of what to say when somebody answers the phone and they want to attempt to get an appointment. So they'll say stuff like, hey, would you like to talk about your SEO services? To use one that I get a lot of. Well, unless I have a burning desire to talk about that, you're not going to get the appointment. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you right now the best way, and you can teach your salespeople to do this, how to create an appointment setting talk track that's going to take them 10 to 15 seconds to get out. Raise your hand if you've ever seen the movie The Princess Bride. Great movie. I love that movie. It's got the greatest format for an appointment setting script in it ever. Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. Polite introduction. You killed my father. Here's what we have in common. Prepare to die. Here's what to expect from our interaction. Now transfer that into your business. Introduce yourself politely. State what your connection is. Tell them what to expect from the conversation, and that expectation had better be business first. And your people will get appointments. By the way, quick little hack on this. Nowadays, 9 out of 10 times you're going to be leaving voicemails because people don't answer their phone that much. Again, that's another generational change. reverse the order when you leave the voicemail. Because when people are answering their voicemails, and I do it too, I don't know what the delete key is on your phone, but for me it's 7. My finger is sitting right this about a millimeter away from the 7 when that voicemail starts to play. And if the first couple of seconds bore me, they're done. You got to beat the delete. So reverse it. Have them set expectations, then introduction, then the connection statement. You will get responses. Matter of fact, you get something even better, which I'll explain to you here in a little bit. But the point is, when we look to connect, younger people are looking for competence before a personal connection. They are looking for you to be good at what you do. Now, here's the cool part. And here's where age matching isn't important, but style matching is. One thing that we see about the millennial generation, and particularly Generation Z, they like adults in the room. They like the voice of experience, even though now most of the millennials are old enough to be the voice of experience. They still like to have the voice of experience in the room. So older salespeople can sell very effectively to younger buyers if they style match. I know salespeople in their 60s and 70s who are still killing it with younger buyers. Now, they sell to younger buyers in a completely different fashion than they sell to older buyers. But they're still killing it with younger buyers because they've never stopped learning, they've never stopped adapting, and they've never stopped figuring out where their buyers are and understanding how to communicate with them. And if you teach your salespeople to do that, your salespeople can be very successful no matter what age they are. Now, what about younger buyers selling to older buyers? Because we see a lot of that too. Older buyers like energy and passion. Everybody likes energy and passion. But one of the edges that a younger salesperson can have is that energy and passion. So make sure they channel that through the proper techniques. Matter of fact, there is one little exception about this whole older buyer, younger buyer situation, but I'm going to make you wait until the end of this program to find out what it is. Let's talk about communication. Now we're circling back to that question that drove this whole program. Troy, all these younger buyers want to do is text. How in the world can I sell to people who only want to text? Well, the first statement is get good at texting. What does getting good at texting mean? Getting good at texting means figuring out how to send a persuasive, grammatically correct, business-oriented message in 240 characters or less. Oh my God, that could be a little difficult, right? It's not. First of all, one of the wonderful things that we have nowadays, and AI is something that everybody's talking about. And again, a lot of people are talking about and advocating it. A lot of people are talking about it and whining and complaining about it. But if you struggle with creating a good text, AI is a fabulous tool for helping you fix that. You probably haven't figured this out, or maybe you have. I can be a little wordy sometimes. If you've read any of my articles in TRSA, you know that I have a hell of a time saying anything substantial in less than 1,000 words. It's true. So getting down to a 240 character text can be difficult for me. But I'll use my AI platform. My favorite AI platform, by the way, is Claude. Claude.ai. I like it better than ChatGPT because I feel like it channels my voice a little bit better, and everything I see written with ChatGPT sounds like ChatGPT. I've actually coined a hashtag for it on LinkedIn. I call it #ChatCrap because it all sounds like the same voice. Claude is wonderful at channeling my voice, and it would be at yours too. But if I need to write a text message and I need to pack a lot into that 240 characters, I'll go ahead and I'll tell Claude, here's what I want it to say. Now give me a text message in 240 characters or less, and Claude does a wonderful job at distilling that down. Now all I got to do is copy, and it sounds like me. Now all I got to do is copy and paste that into my text message. Boom, I'm done. And by the way, it is important to be grammatically correct. In business, you should not use the letter U for the word you. You should punctuate. Sometimes I feel weird about saying this, but I feel like I have to, given some of the business text messages I've seen. But a platform like these, tools like these, are important. And here's what happens. Younger buyers will gain respect for salespeople who are more senior with them if they see that those salespeople can adapt to their communication technologies, styles, and platforms. One of those older salespeople that I was telling you about, I'll even name his name, he's Bert Horowitz. He's in Chicago, he's 72 years old, works for an office supply company that I've done business with. He's been through training that I've done. Bert is the most adventurous, innovative, technologically savvy salesperson, probably one of the top 10 that I know of in terms of tech savviness, 72 years old. Still in the game, still loves it. Bert, I don't know what will happen to Bert someday if he ever can't make a sales call. I mean, that's who he is. It's who he is, what he does, and he's great at it. Bert texts. Bert uses video chat. Bert is very good at WhatsApp, and he's ahead of me on that one. He has a great LinkedIn profile. I mean, Bert's all over it. If he hears about something new, he's going to try it. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a little story about Bert. He told me this one. About 8 or 9 years ago for Christmas, his granddaughter got him a selfie stick. He looked at it and he thought, the hell am I going to do with a selfie stick? At the time, he was 63 years old. Took it to his office, set it on his desk, just let it go out of his mind. Now, the company that he works for, Garvey's Office Products, they have a very large office furniture showroom that is by appointment only. But I mean, they've got some really high-end office furniture stuff. And Bert tells me, he goes, you know, I was out, I made sales calls, I sat down at my desk and I was going to write the same, and this is his quote, the same boring ass thanks for seeing me message that I always write to everyone. And he said, I looked at that selfie stick and I just stopped. And he said, I pulled that selfie stick out and I read the directions. By the way, for Bert, reading the directions is a huge deal. Read the directions. He goes, I went out in the office furniture showroom, turned on the lights, took my selfie stick, and I said, hey, Frank, it was great to see you today. One thing I didn't get a chance to talk about was our office furniture selection, but you can see it behind me. If you'd like to talk about office furniture, give me a call. I'd love to bring you in and give you a tour. 30-second video. He sends it to Frank. An hour later, Frank calls him back, and he says, how much was that blonde wood setup right behind you? 15 minutes after that, he's got a $10,000 furniture order. Frank, by the way, was 33 years old. But because this guy who was twice his age was technologically proving that he was on his level, Frank was all over it. Bert all of a sudden became the voice of experience, the adult in the room, right? But the adult in the room who could still get on his level. Teach your salespeople to communicate on the customer's level with the customer's preferred platforms. If you do that, your salespeople will be more successful at this intergenerational selling. But, my God, there's a lot of stuff out there now. Wouldn't you agree with that? There are apps all over the place, and sometimes you don't even know what you need to be on because there are so many different communications tools. You've got text messaging. You've got all sorts of video technology, Zoom, Teams, Google Meet. Full disclosure, I hate Teams because as soon as you log on to a Teams call, Teams decides it wants to take over your computer and become part of your startup menu. I've got a client in Burbank who likes Teams, and I've got to disable that function after every one of his calls. That's okay, I'll do it. Google Meet, that's a big one. WhatsApp, a messaging application that I'm starting to learn about because I've got a client who wants to know more about it. I've got one client in Illinois, in Peoria. The only way he communicates with me is on LinkedIn messaging. I've got his email. I've got his office phone. I've got his cell phone. He likes to communicate on LinkedIn instant messaging. And he spends money with me that way. I'm not going to bitch. It's unusual, but you've got to be prepared that some customers you have are going to want to talk to you that way. Now, what that means for a salesperson of any generation is that they've got to be prepared to deal with all of this stuff. The level of communications versatility required of a successful salesperson right now is light years ahead of what it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 25 years ago. You know, when I was selling in the field in the mid-90s, man, there was telephone, there was email, there were actual on-paper letters that went out in these things called envelopes in which we put things called stamps on them, which used to take a day or two and now take 3 or 4 weeks to get there. That's another story. And in-person cold calling. Nowadays, look at all of this stuff that you've got to master. And if your customer says WhatsApp and your salesperson says what's that, you're probably not going to have a good shot at that business because they're not going to respect the idea that you are technologically on the same page. So here's the equation. It's right there. Adaptability, the ability to communicate in whatever platform your customer wants, plus experience. Again, adults in the room, your customers still want to believe that they're in good hands. They still want to believe they're with somebody who can solve their problems, somebody preferably who's seen a lot, done a lot, and has figured out how to solve a lot, plus expertise, demonstrated that you and your company are good at what you do. That equals credibility with your customers. Who can define credibility for me? What does credibility mean? Any thoughts, any ideas? Okay, I'll give you my definition. Credibility is the characteristic that makes the customer believe what you say because it is you who says it. If your customer feels the need to back check you, if your customer feels the need when you tell them something to grab their phone, pull it up on the screen, you don't have credibility. If your customer hears something that you say and says, yep, that sounds right, I believe that, Chris, because you said it, then you have credibility. And your salespeople should be striving for credibility with their customers in all ways and all forms. But when you're dealing with younger buyers, you cannot be tech averse. You cannot be tech shy. And here's the thing. Because apps continue to come out so quickly, inevitably, your salespeople are going to hear about something that they don't know about, and they're going to hear about it from a younger buyer. Here's what I want you to tell your salespeople to do. First of all, what they shouldn't do. They shouldn't do, I don't know about that. What they should do is, hey, that sounds cool, show me. Show intellectual curiosity. Show openness. Don't get me wrong, younger buyers don't mind getting a little bit ahead of you technologically from time to time. But if they are, you've got to demonstrate that you are open to learning that which they want you to learn. And if you do that, you can still keep this credibility. But yeah, versatility is one of the big keys. Now I'm going to tell you another huge key to selling to younger buyers. LinkedIn. Raise your hand if you have a LinkedIn profile. Almost everybody in here, good. Raise your hand if you have made a post on LinkedIn in the last week. Woo, not as many. Not as many there at all. Raise your hand if you have engaged with somebody else's content on LinkedIn in the last week by liking it, commenting it, or sharing. A few more, okay. When we talk about credibility with younger buyers, one of their acid tests is LinkedIn. 1 out of 3 younger buyers will research you on LinkedIn. By the way, I doubt that stat. I think it's more. I'm convinced that it's more. LinkedIn gives you legitimacy. It makes you real. I think some of that is a reaction to how many bots there are out there, how many scammers there are out there. And don't get me wrong, they exist on LinkedIn as well. But a full and functioning presence on LinkedIn makes you legitimate. By the way, it also does something else for you. LinkedIn makes you Googleable as a person. Try Googling your own name and see what comes up. Of course, the more common your name is, the more different results you may find. Apparently, there's a Troy Harrison who is a very famous actor in Australia. Didn't know that until a few years ago when I started searching out Troy Harrison. Now, I will say I have progressed to the point where if you Google Troy Harrison, I'm on the first page. I don't know if that means he's making less movies or if I'm getting a little more notoriety, but one of the two, I'm on the first page. But Google yourself. And if you get a whole bunch of results that don't matter, maybe zero it in a little bit by putting in your hometown. One of the top results you will get is your LinkedIn profile. For some of you, that's a great thought. For some of you, it's probably kind of scary. But your customers are going to do that. You know, I told you that when you left voicemails that you should put the statement of expectations first, leave a good voicemail. Here's what happens when you do that, and I have seen this. I still do cold calling drills with some of my clients. This is amazing. When your salespeople call and prospect, and they leave good quality voicemails, the next day their LinkedIn views are going to go up. Who do you think is viewing them? A lot of the people that they left messages for. In my experience, it's about 25%. You leave a good voicemail, about 1 out of every 4 people that you leave those voicemails for are going to plug your name into LinkedIn to see if you're legitimate. Sometimes they'll send you a connection request, most often they don't, but when you send them a connection request, a lot of them accept. Now you've got a relationship. You've got an opening to a relationship, right? And here's where most salespeople are going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. They're immediately going to jump all over that and send them a hard sell message. Here's 3 paragraphs about why you should be dying to meet with me. Please meet with me next week. Please, please, please meet with me. And a lot of times you're going to get disconnected because LinkedIn is about relationships. So teach your salespeople. When they connect with someone, here's the message they should send. Something like this. Thank you for accepting my connection request. I'm looking forward to getting to know you. If there's anything I can do to help you, please let me know. That's it. Then engage with their content over a period of a couple of months or so, and then do an appointment request with them. Prospecting on social media is a slow play, but the work you don't do today will not give you appointments 2 to 3 months down the road. The work you do today likely will. But here's the thing, you are your LinkedIn profile. In a business sense, you are your LinkedIn profile when you're prospecting. Most people get it wrong. The bare minimum, you should have a headshot, a professional headshot, not standing there holding up a fish or anything. I've seen them. You should have your career history, and it should be current, by the way. Here's a fun exercise. Check your salespeople's LinkedIn profiles. I bet some of them haven't even updated it to have you as their current job. I see it. I see it all the time. Make a spot check. And you should have activity. I'm going to show you how to spot all that in a minute. Another thing, Google reviews matter. Raise your hand if you have looked at your Google reviews within the last week. Nobody. Okay, that's a little surprising to me. Your Google reviews are another one of those ways that prospects will research you and that they will put you into a bucket and they will figure out who you are and what you are all about. You or your sales manager should be looking at Google reviews at least every week to see what your number is, how many of them there are. You should be responding to each one of those Google reviews, good or bad. I had a client in this industry a couple of years ago that he and I were having a Zoom call, and he was talking about pricing, and he said, Troy, we are a premium provider. We should be getting a premium price for our services. That sounds great, doesn't it? That's where we want to be. I pulled up his Google reviews. He had a 3.7 on 37 reviews. I pulled up Cintas's reviews that competed with him, the closest Cintas branch. 4.9 on 347 reviews. I said, okay, who's a premium provider here? I told him, you guys might be better than Cintas, but you haven't done a good job of managing your Google reviews. You should be requesting Google reviews from your happy customers on a regular basis. You should be looking at your Google reviews on a regular basis, because understand, this is how these younger buyers are going to figure out who you are and what you're all about. Now, 25 years ago as a salesman, I was basically the only conduit of information about my company to my customers. That was cool. I'll be honest with you, that was a blast. But it's not that way anymore, and we have to adapt and recognize that. So let's talk about what makes up a good LinkedIn profile. This is a good friend of mine. His name's Ryan Parshall. I've actually learned a lot about Google reviews from him. I've learned a lot about LinkedIn from him. He actually did my website several years ago, and he did a good enough job that I've still not felt a real need to do any substantial update. He's a great guy. He now has a business helping marketing agencies sell. He's basically a business broker to marketing agencies. So look at Ryan's profile. First of all, we got the headshot. We got the LinkedIn banner that explains what it is that he does. Actually has his contact information up there. Right at the top, that's valuable real estate. His tagline, grow, scale, or sell. About him, I help grow, scale, and sell marketing agencies and local businesses. Pretty explanatory, right? If you are looking for that, he's probably your guy. LinkedIn gives you an opportunity to put one link there. Could be to your website, could be to a YouTube channel, could be to a social media channel. Ryan has people on the YouTube channel because he says, if I can get people to watch my videos, I've got an appointment, and if I've got an appointment, I got a great chance of getting business. He's got a very well thought out sales funnel. 8,425 followers and 500 plus connections. That's strong. By the way, notice that his About Me here, over here, there's his About Me. Exit mergers and acquisitions, there's a big difference in the bigger business broker space. You notice his tagline is not, I'm a results-oriented professional who, it's not the job objective on a resume. Coach your salespeople that not only should they have an About Me section, it should not read like a resume. They are not a job seeker. They are a seller of services. Down here, lists out what services he offers. Activity. Ryan posts quite a bit. And by the way, anybody off the street can look at his profile and see all of these things. Because it's public. That's what LinkedIn is. So if somebody who didn't know Ryan, let's say that you owned a marketing agency and you saw this Ryan Parshall guy and you thought, I'm going to check him out. Would this make you more or less interested in talking to him if you're thinking about selling that agency? Should make you more interested, right? This is a great LinkedIn profile. Now, I'm going to show you another one. This is a guy that I came across. I'm just going to call this doing it less right, okay? Now, he does have a professional headshot up there. What's odd is a week before when I looked at that profile, he did not. There was some communication, and I think he was led to understand that his LinkedIn profile wasn't doing him much good. Says where he works, says where he's from, where he went to school, got connections. No About Me. right? Doesn't say anything. There is no about me statement. There's no tagline. None of that. Activity. Chad hasn't posted yet. Never has Chad sat down, hit the plus button on LinkedIn, took his fingers, and typed out something. Does have his job experience. Now, let's take a millennial buyer who might be a candidate for Chad's services. What's that person going to think? What do you guys think? What if you were that millennial buyer? Heck, even if you're where you're at right now, what do you think when you look at that? What? Yeah, could be a bot. You don't know. I happen to know he's a real person. I've talked to him, but would you think? Raise your hand if you would think that he was a viable provider of the service that you were interested in. Raise your hand if there's anything there that would get you excited about talking to him. Probably not. Here's the bad part. I would estimate that for him to make his profile look somewhat like this one, 30 minutes. Doesn't take a long time to do it. And then to be able to have activity on your LinkedIn profile, 10 minutes a day. LinkedIn's quick, guys. You would be amazed at how much engagement you can do in 10 to 15 minutes a day. If you're trying to figure out a daily discipline for your salespeople, teach your salespeople to spend 15 minutes a day on LinkedIn. One post, and then like, share, and comment on content posted by other people, particularly people that you would like to do business with. And by the way, those comments shouldn't be, you should do business with me, right? I see people doing that too. They do it to me. That content should be, the comments should be, this is interesting, this is a great tip, thank you, I'm going to take it to my team, whatever. People post things on LinkedIn because they want attention, right? So when we give them that attention by hitting the like button, by sharing it, by commenting, we give them that little dopamine hit, and they see, Chris commented on my post. Okay, I think more of Chris now. LinkedIn engagement is critical in intergenerational selling. And if your salespeople aren't doing it right, you need to get them on the program, because this isn't going to get less going forward. It's going to get more going forward. Now, here's the funny thing. Here's the exception that proves the rule. So far, I have spent 47 minutes generalizing based on age, haven't I? Now I'm going to spend the next 3 minutes blowing up half of what I just said. There are a lot of older buyers out there that are looking at these millennials and Gen Zs and going, hey, they've got some pretty good ideas here. I'm going to start doing business this way. There are buyers in their 60s who do business the exact same way. I've got a client back home in Kansas City. He's the president of a food service company. He and I have done business, I think he was my 12th client. We've done business since 2005. He has spent money with me every year since 2005. He's by far my biggest client. He still spends money with me. We met, okay? If I were to send him an email right now, Tuesday morning, might get a response by Friday. If I called him a few times, Thursday afternoon he might get around to returning my call. If I texted him right now, I'd have a response by the time I checked out of this hotel. Text is his preferred platform. He's very active on LinkedIn. He does all those things that I'm talking about the millennials and Gen Zs doing. And the reason he's done it is that he's seen the way these people do business, and he says, this is more efficient. I'm 62 years old. I too would like to have more time with my family. So I'm going to do some of these things. And I will tell you this, in 2005, 2006, when he and I would have an appointment, the first 30 minutes would be about personal stuff, where we went on our vacations, all that kind of stuff. Nowadays, he and I will get together for an after-hours drink about once per quarter, and that's when we talk about that stuff. When I walk into his office during business hours, we're talking business, because he was working on work-life balance too. So this is where you can't stereotype by age alone. You've got to be adaptable. And I will coach you this too. If you are trying to figure out where people are at, have your salespeople open with that business first approach with everybody. Because really, the business first approach rarely won't get you an appointment. And then have them be versatile and intellectually agile enough to be able to shift gears when they're in the sales call. But when I talk about how much sales has changed in the last 5 years, this is a big piece of what I'm talking about. Salespeople who are adaptable, who can adapt, improvise, and overcome, who can figure out where their customers are and communicate on that level with them. Not by looking at them, not by stereotyping, not by looking at stuff on the wall, but actually having a dialogue and be mentally agile enough to make that move and say, I'm going to work on your level. Those are the salespeople that have a huge competitive advantage today. And that's where you want your salespeople to be. So, action plan. You guys saw it yesterday. I like to give you homework. I'm going to do it again today. I want you, by the end of this week, it's fun for me to tell a lot of people what to do. I want you to audit your LinkedIn profile by the end of the week. Measure it against those things that we talked about. Do you have a good about me statement? Do you have activity? Is your career history up to date? Do you have a good headshot? Do you have a good tagline? And if you don't, take 30 minutes and make it that way. Practice business first opening statements with your salespeople. That setting expectation statement. Teach them that Princess Bride introduction format, and then come in behind that and teach them cooperatively what those opening lines should be. Equip them to get appointments that way. If there are any of the main communication platforms that you don't know, especially the video platforms, figure them out. If you're not using some form of an AI platform, get used to using it, because it will help you with all these things. Review your Google reviews. Since no hands shot up, everybody here's got some work to do on that one, don't they? And I'm serious as a heart attack. I hope strongly that by the time you're having dinner, you will have looked at your Google reviews, because that is what the world thinks of you. And prepare some good business-focused opening questions instead of, when's your birthday, tell me about your kids. If you do those things, you will be started down the path of bridging the generation gap and selling to younger buyers. And that is where you want to be in order to be successful. Again, this stuff isn't going away. Okay? Buyer tendencies are not going to flip back to what they were with the baby boomer generation. If anything, they're going to proceed faster down this path. Sales is changing, and you need to get your sales team ready. But I want to thank you all very much. This has been a great trip. It's been great talking to the conference. I love working with the WTSA. Thank you, Tim, for bringing me out here. Tim knows I'll come speak for him anytime he wants and anytime I can, even if it's not in Maui. But thank you very much. It's been a great conference. Have a great day.